What's up, guys? I'm Skilla and this is Nerd Stuff with Skilla, and today I wanted to talk about the movie Mother, directed by Darren Aronofsky. I watched this movie last night and it was totally insane. If you have not seen it, please do not watch this video because I don't know of a way to talk about it without spoiling things. It was really crazy. It was intense. It's one of the most intense movies I've ever seen, honestly. It was heartbreaking at some points and terrifying at some points and just absolutely bonkers. The movie makes you believe that it's about a husband and wife. The husband is a poet and the wife is a wife. She's cleaning up their house and repairing it after a giant fire. The main characters are played by Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem. They play the character Mother and the character him, and they're never referred to as anything else. The next two characters that you're introduced to are named Man and Woman, and the next two characters are named Younger Brother and Oldest Son. It lets you know just through the naming of the characters that it is a parable. I think that it is a parable for all of human history, with the focus being on the God character played by Javier Bardem and the Mother character, Mother Earth character played by Jennifer Lawrence. I think that the house itself could be considered a character in this movie, like a lot of great horror films, and the house represents Earth. After we get to know Jennifer and Javier a little bit more, we are introduced to the characters played by Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer, which are man and woman. I think they're a pretty clear representation of Adam and Eve from the Bible. They have two sons. Jennifer Lawrence lets Michelle Pfeiffer know that she cannot go into Javier Bardem's writing room, and I think that the writing room represents the Garden of Eden, because as soon as she goes in there, she takes Ed Harris up into the room and they break the little stone that Javier Bardem says was the only thing left after his house had burnt down. So we have Adam and Eve, we have Cain and Abel. While there is a group of mourners at their house who just show up out of nowhere, everybody in this movie, with the exception of Mother and him, are uninvited guests. Like, him is pretty cool with everybody being there, most likely because God created man so he could have some company, is kind of what it leads you to believe, and kind of what the Bible leads you to believe. Him doesn't mind that everybody's there. Like, even when things are getting super crazy, like, he might get a little bit upset. He got very upset when the stone, which I think represents knowledge, was broken. I think it's just like the apple in the story of Adam and Eve, where she takes the apple and they both eat from it, and then they both have the knowledge that they're naked and they have the knowledge of good and evil. When that is broken, when that is touched, his trust is broken and he shuts off his writing room, just like God shut off the Garden of Eden in the Bible. So there's several biblical references through this. Later on, there is a couple of characters who come in and sit on this sink and Jennifer Lawrence is like, hey, that thing's not braced yet, like, you need to get up off of there, and they just kept on sitting on there even though she told them not to, and they break it and there's this huge gush of water that comes out of the wall and it's raining outside, and I think that's a metaphor for the flood of Noah's Ark fame. And everybody leaves, just like everybody was wiped off of the planet when that happens. She tells everybody, get out. She's so furious, and the weather is affected by her fury, I think. Just like in the Bible, nature came and took care of all of the unwanted visitors who were not doing what they're supposed to be doing. She got rid of everybody. The flood came. Everything's cleared out. Things seem to be going pretty good between her and old Javier, and eventually he puts a baby in her. So, as the movie progresses, it turns into this just insane scene of people showing up and people causing destruction in their house, and it's impossible to describe without you actually watching it, because there is so much chaos. There's so much craziness that happens in the last half hour of this movie that there's no way for somebody to just describe it with words. I believe that the rapid progression of how bad things get has to do with the rapid progression of man and how our being here affected nature and has been destroying the earth, just like all of the people in the house are destroying the house. There's murders, there's zealots, and a lot of the extra characters, like, nobody again has a real name. All of the extra characters who don't really have lines or who are just parts of mobs in these scenes are named Defiler, Zealot, Adulterer, Idler, Wanderer, fool, philanderer. They all have names of, some of them have positive names, but most of them have negative names about things that people do. I think that Kristen Wiig's character, her name is the Herald, and I really think that she represents like organized religion in some way. How a lot of modern religion has defiled the original word, which I thought was really interesting. This whole movie was crazy from beginning to end. There's another parable, I think, at the end of Jesus, where Jennifer finally gives birth to her baby, and she tries to keep it from Javier because she thinks that he's going to do something bad with it. As soon as she falls asleep, he pulls that baby out of her arms and then throws him to the world, gives him to all of these crazed people, and they like crowd surf this little baby back to the other end of the room, and you hear the baby's neck snap, and it was awful. I felt like I got punched in the gut. It was crazy. And Jennifer loses her mind. She runs after this baby. She's screaming for a baby. She finally gets to where the baby ended up, and it's just a pile of bones and flesh, and all of the people around him are eating it. Just like in the Last Supper, Jesus said, eat of my flesh and drink of my blood. So they're using this baby's corpse in a ritualistic fashion to get some of God's essence into them, because they all worship him's character, the character of him, Javier's character, or whatever. As soon as the Cain and Abel scene happened at the beginning of the movie, I was on track with what the theme was. Like, up till that point, I was a little back and forth on it. I wasn't completely sure. One of the brothers kills the other with a doorknob, which was knocked off of the door to the Garden of Eden room, and he breaks it over his brother's head. I think that shows, the knowledge, and the knowledge of good and evil is something that led to that situation, kind of like it does in the Bible. Things get crazier and crazier, and eventually Jennifer Lawrence is getting just beat up, and everybody's calling her all these horrible names, and Javier pops in and tries to get her out of there, and he tries to take her to another place in the house, but she's trying to leave, and he gets her somewhere else, and then she runs downstairs to the boiler room, where she lights the house on fire. Everything explodes. Everybody dies except for her and Javier. And he says he wants one more thing from her. And she says, I don't have anything left to give. And he says, yes, you do. If you still have any love in your heart for me, then give me your heart, basically. And he yanks into her chest and rips that bitch out. Throughout the whole movie, you see different scenes of her touching the walls of the house and feeling how everything's feeling. Like, you see a glimpse into a heart of some kind, and you find out that is her literal heart. And it's getting blacker and blacker as things get worse and worse on inside the house on Earth. And it is completely black and just shrunken to shrivels at the very end of the movie. And I think she drinks this weird elixir throughout the entire movie, and I really feel like that is something to show that she's trying to calm herself down, like something that prevents her from going crazy and destroying everything. Because as we all know, if anything's going to kill all of humanity, it's definitely nature. Nature's going to come and put a boot up her asses. If you don't know that already, you better get on board with that, because that's the truth. So I kind of feel like that represents maybe like, this might be reaching a little bit, maybe ozone or something that protects the planet. And she's drinking this to try and keep things from getting wildly out of hand, even though they're going to get wildly out of hand anyway. And eventually she just tosses that down the toilet because she's pregnant, and she thinks that that's going to save everything, that her and God having a baby together are going to save the planet, but that is not what happens. So she dies, he yanks her heart out of her chest, and then we restart the cycle again with a different woman playing mother. It ends exactly the same way that the movie began, which is always nice to bring you back in that cyclical path and remind you where you started and how you got to where you are now. So I really like that in any movie, that you see it a lot. Similar beginning shots to end shots. There's actually a full video on YouTube of beginning and end shots of different famous films, and it's really interesting to watch how different directors utilize that. I really enjoyed this movie. I would give it, like, I don't know that I would give it a full 5 stars, just because sometimes the action was hard to follow. But it's because it was coming from Mother's perspective. Like, it was meant to be a little hard to follow, I think. I am completely okay with a challenging film. A lot of people probably hate this movie, I would guess, because it's so jarring and difficult to watch, really. But I like that kind of movie, so I really enjoyed it. I'd probably give it, like, I don't know, like just a hair below 5 stars, just a smidge. But I really, really liked this movie. I'll probably go see it again to see if I can catch some more references throughout the whole thing. But if you're okay with a really, really heavy, hard to watch movie that's challenging as a viewer, this is definitely a movie for you. If you're not really into that kind of thing and you want to go see a comedy or a horror movie, go see something else. If you enjoyed this video or you found some information in it, go on and give me a big thumbs up. If you have any different theories or if you want to expand on anything that I've said, please drop a comment down below. If you think I'm dead wrong on everything, let me know. I'd love to know your theories and hear what you think about this film. Go on and subscribe if you want to hear more nerdy stuff from me about film and TV shows. And thank you so much for watching.